Well, that was fun, wasn't it? I had fun. I hope you guys had fun. Kansas beats Iowa State 69-52 at Allen Fieldhouse. They get their revenge. They bounce back from the loss against Baylor. Are we back on track? Let's talk about it.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network, a live edition tonight on Monday night. A little bit late tonight after Big Monday, Kansas and Iowa State. I'm Nick Springer. I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. As always, we're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. We are live on our YouTube channel right now, so if you are joining us in the live chat, be sure to drop a comment like Eli did here, who says, rock chalk after Kansas's big win. If you're watching after the fact, be sure to subscribe. You can still share a comment afterwards as well on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jacks KCSN. And if you're listening on our audio platforms, you can certainly subscribe wherever you get your audio on Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you may listen. And also leave a 5-star rating and review. It helps us grow the channel here as we continue to cover KU. So a huge win for Kansas, 69-52. Kansas beats Iowa State. Iowa State, Kevin, they couldn't shoot it in the ocean all night long. It was a brutal game for Iowa State. And that was kind of the big storyline coming into this game for both these teams, right? Is both teams played on Saturday, and both teams had very disappointing results. Iowa State plays against K-State at home. All the students at Iowa State show their phones to Jerome Tang because they want to make sure that he can see that they're all recording his huddle after what happened last year, and they lose by 19. Kansas gets up 19 at the half against Baylor, and they lose.
I heard rumors of that game, but it didn't happen.
So both teams needed this game really pretty badly because of that. On a short turnaround, we had talked about whether or not the short turnaround would potentially favor Kansas or hurt Kansas in this case because of it. Well, it certainly seemed like it helped Kansas in the game because Iowa State just looked, honestly, they looked uninterested. They looked uninspired. They looked like they didn't want to be out there. And as a result, they shot incredibly poorly overall in the game. Kansas took advantage, gets out to another lead early in the game and at halftime, and then carries it through the rest of the game, unlike they were able to do against Baylor, and ultimately ended up winning by 17 points in this one.
Yeah, Iowa State didn't just shoot the ball poorly, ran just awful offense. And I think that a lot of that does have to do with KU, Nick, and some of the lineups that KU was putting out there. I'm sure we'll get into that here in a little bit. If you wanted to see a flurry at the 4 game, this just probably wasn't going to be it, in terms of, KJ matches up a little bit better with Jefferson. And then when they take Jefferson out, because Momcilovic isn't playing, Iowa State's playing 4 guards where the tallest guy is 6'4". And we've seen Flory do some amazing things defensively this year. The one thing that, maybe isn't what you want him to do is chase a 6'4" guard around the perimeter. And so this was a game that maybe lent a little bit more to, hey, if you're trying to play some defense, KJ Adams should be your for it and should be out there in that one. But overall, Nick, a really, really nice showing. I thought not just defensively, though, offensively, I realized they scored 69 points, had a pretty decent, points per possession against Iowa State, who was a top 10 defense. But even beyond that, Nick, you think about the shots that Kansas missed, right? Like Kansas got to the basket, missed some looks at the basket. Kansas got some great 3-point looks. Rylan Griffin had some terrific 3-point looks that didn't go in. And so it's weird to say on a day where you shoot 9 for 18 from 3, but Kansas executed really well offensively. And I think that was one of the things that we really wanted to see from this team is if you're going to get a lead, continue to execute offensively, continue to get good shots. And because of that, Iowa State never challenged in the second half. Kansas went into the break up 16. The closest Iowa State got was 15, and they didn't hit that mark until I think about 3.5 minutes left to go. KU immediately responds with a 3 to push it back up to 18, and they were never that close again. And so there wasn't even a period where Iowa State challenged in this one, which I think also speaks to the fact that Kansas executed so well on the offensive end, where whenever Iowa State was able to get say a bucket here, a bucket there, then all of a sudden Kansas made a play or two.
Eli, we are definitely going to talk about the alley-oop play. That was a heck of a play. Eli also dropped this question earlier about the defensive performance, which you kind of highlighted there, Kevin, about was it a great defensive performance from Kansas or was Iowa State just that cold? I think, unfortunately, it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, like I said, to me, Iowa State just from the get-go looked really not interested in playing the game. Like they
was similar to UCF in that respect. In the UCF, like at some point in Orlando, just was not running good offense. It was kind of like they were like, well, we're not scoring today, so the defensive effort against Cincy was pretty good. But if you're talking about like against a team that you know can score and really present problems, some of it was Iowa State, some of it was KU. KU defended Duke really well for a lot of that game, not just in terms of preventing Duke from getting good shots, but also generating some turnovers in the way that they were able to blitz Duke's ball screens. And so they've had a few of those, but I do think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, and then in regards to the alley-oop play, since Eli asked about it, certainly an incredible play, maybe the play of the year for Kansas, but not for the reasons you might think. And here's what I mean by that. You go back and watch that play and break it down. It's Hunter and AJ that in kind of a transition moment sort of force a loose ball. And then it's DeJuan going on. I'm going to steal a term from Brian Haney here, who used this term on the radio broadcast. DeJuan going on a slip and slide to get the ball away from an Iowa State player. I think it was Keyshawn Gilbert, who did not dive on the floor, right? And those are the types of plays that Bill Self constantly highlights is those things right there, right? One guy got on the floor, another guy didn't, and look what the outcome was. So those three. So this is really a play that encompasses all five players.
Yep.
Hunter and AJ, it's sort of in that transition moment, sort of force the loose ball. Then you have DeJuan going on the slip and slide to get the steal, the pass to Diggy Coit, and then of course, obviously, the absolutely just mind-bogglingly athletic finish on the alley-oop pass from damn near half court to KJ Adams. So
did you see the still image of KJ's dunk, like where he was basically turned around, like with the crowd to his back, like facing Iowa State? Like if somebody were to print up that image, I think you'd have a decent number of buyers. It was pretty fantastic. But like you said, all five players. Because, I mean, when DeJuan got on the court, he immediately got the ball up to Hunter Dickinson, who got it to Diggy Coit really quickly, which I thought was an underrated part of that play by Dickinson, not just being there for DeJuan to get the ball to, but also getting the ball to a guard and to, so that he can have a transition opportunity there. And then, KJ running the floor like he did. Also, DeJuan Harris ran the floor on that. If you watch the replay, not only does he get up after getting the ball back, when KJ comes down off the rim, DeJuan is standing right next to him. I don't know how he got from on the floor to where he basically has a front row seat to KJ Adams, the finish of his dunk. But yeah, it was a great sequence.
And I think going back to Eli's question about the defensive performance, I think Nick kind of highlights it here. Talking about the rebounding on the defensive end. That was by far the biggest flaw in the game for Kansas. If you want to sort of take a glass half empty look at this type of game for KU, is the defensive rebounding was really bad early on in the game and didn't get a whole lot better. Iowa State at one point early in the game had missed 17 shots, but had like 8 offensive rebounds off those shots. So it was a really bizarre game because Iowa State wasn't shooting the ball particularly well, right? But they were getting a ton of offensive rebounds, and they just were still missing all of their second and third chances. I mean, there was a play late in the first half where they had, I think, literally 4 chances right at the rim and didn't put it in at all. So I think that's where you'd have to say maybe this defensive performance for KU wasn't the best. Is they clearly did struggle to defensive rebound at times, especially in the first half. I think they got a little better in the second half, but also I think in the second half it was just kind of running away with it as well. So the other big story to me, especially at the start of the game, was the situation with KJ Adams and Floyd Baduga. And I really want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. The starting lineups get announced. KJ Adams is in it, and Ryland Griffin is in it, by the way, also for the first time in, I think, 9 or 10 games in place of Shaq Moore. And pretty early in the game, you get a chant going from the student section saying, "We want Flory." There's a couple things that I want to break down with this. my initial reaction was immediately I did not like it.
Yeah.
And here's why I didn't like it. I didn't like it because it's not like Flory wasn't going to play. It's not like Flory wasn't going to get on the floor. It is unbelievable how much emphasis people will put on the starting lineup. Starting lineups are the most useless, irrelevant thing in basketball, in my opinion. It doesn't matter. The starting lineup does not matter, right? All that matters is when you look at the end, who was effective, who played more, whatever, blah, 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 right? The starting lineup to me doesn't matter at all. And so to make that chant for him not starting, just I didn't like it at all. I didn't think it made a lot of sense. And then I tweeted about this, and I think some people had a similar sentiment. I got the sense, Kevin, and this is where I'd love to get your take on this. I got the sense, especially early on, Flory eventually gets in the game pretty early on at the under 16 timeout, I think, within 4 minutes into the game. And it's obvious that he's present. It's obvious that he is really trying too hard. And to me, I drew an immediate conclusion of that chant put a significant amount more pressure on Flory, that he felt like he needed to go out and do something and try to make a play. And, we're still talking about a freshman here, right? We're still talking about a young player. And not just a young player from a freshman standpoint, just a young player from a basketball standpoint. I mean, this guy has not been playing basketball that long. He's not a freshman who's been playing AAU for the last 10 years of his life. So I didn't like it initially because of that, because of the situation where you knew he was going to play. And then I really didn't like it even more so because we saw, I think, how it affected Flory in a negative way. So, I hope that there's a lesson there maybe for the student section and so on and so forth about that type of thing, because everyone wants Flory to succeed. Obviously, everyone should want KJ Adams to succeed. I don't know if that's always the case, but I'm just telling you, everyone should want both of those things. And they're not mutually exclusive, right? One guy doesn't have to succeed for the other guy to fail, or vice versa. And so to hear that, I think, was really unfortunate, especially considering, what KJ Adams has gone through and what he's meant to this program. But I really felt bad for him. And like I said, I feel bad for Flory too in the aftermath, because again, I think it very much negatively impacted his performance in this game, because there's no question. I mean, look, it was heard on the broadcast. They were talking about on the radio broadcast. The part I was listening to part of it with Brian Haney and Greg Gurley. Like, it was a major storyline of the start of the game. And one guy certainly heard it, and that was Flory. And I think it definitely hurt him in the game, especially early on. So those are the two reasons why I didn't like it initially, obviously. And then I didn't like it even more so after that because of that. Because again, it's not like Flory wasn't going to play. I think the only realm where this would be even remotely even understandable, I guess, would be if there's 5 minutes left in the game and Flory hasn't seen the floor yet. Then okay, I guess, maybe. But even still, so I didn't like it. I'll be curious to see. We're obviously live right now on our YouTube channel, so we'll see if Bill Self has any comments on it as post game gets going. But certainly, I was not a fan of it for multiple reasons.
Yeah, another reason why I didn't like it was he hadn't done anything wrong, right? The game had just started. It wasn't like KJ had gone out and kicked the ball into the stands or something, or turned the ball over, or even missed a shot. The game had just started. And I did think it was kind of funny. They're chanting for Flory, and KJ gets the ball, takes it, right around under the basket, and finds Zeke Mayo for a three. And it was a nice little response. And it's funny, you still see right now online the discourse with KJ, and I get it. He is a polarizing player, especially when you have a guy with Flory's talent sitting right there, where you say, hey, this guy needs to get more minutes. And believe me, I think all of us are kind of we would love to see more Flory minutes. That's not the thing. I think the issue here is a lot of the things that KJ does do well get kind of swept under the rug, they don't mean as much. In this game, they needed KJ's defense going up against a team that was going to play 4 out a lot, against a team that was going to play 4 guards a lot. Again, you don't want Flory chasing Keyshawn Gilbert around the perimeter. That's not his strength. This was going to be a game where Fleury was going to play more minutes at the 5 probably than he was at the 4, just based on matchups. And so, based on those chances and things like that, and then, you bring up the fact that KJ played great defense today, which he did. He was terrific defensively. There were multiple possessions that he basically killed for Iowa State because of his defense. And people want to say, well, the defense was all right, but he didn't do anything offensively. He had 5 assists. Like, I get that he didn't score, but at the same time, 2 of those assists, just off the top of my head, Nick, I need to go back and look, were for 3-pointers. When your 4 is a guy that is producing, say, around 20 points, be it from scoring and assists, that's not bad offensively. Brad's comment, where was his defense against Baylor on the wing? That was a game that we actually said in our live show, like right now, that Fleury should have played more because the matchups dictated Fleury playing more in that game, with Norshad Omier being a different kind of 4, with the fact that Rob Wright was getting to the rim over and over again. That was a game where you really could have used Fleury's shot blocking more. And I think, to your point, Nick, about, one guy doesn't have to fail for the other guy to succeed. I do think that there's kind of a relationship here where this works for both guys, where KJ Adams is put into situations where he has a chance to succeed and be his best self, and Fleury gets to be in situations where he gets to succeed and be his best self. If you have Cincinnati, a team that plays bigger, you're generally going to want Fleury in that game at the 4 with the things that he can do and everything. If you're playing a team that plays, 4 guards more often, you're probably going to want KJ and his ability to switch onto smaller guys. And so it's not necessarily saying something where it's like it always has to be this guy or it always has to be that guy. No, it can be both, and they both can find success here.
Yeah, that's really the part that I hate the most about this, is that it really does feel like for a lot of people it's become an either-or situation. And it doesn't have to be that way. They both clearly have strengths. I mean, we've talked about it in the past. Like, for this Kansas team to reach its heights, which is a second, third weekend in the NCAA tournament trying to cut the nets down, both KJ Adams and Fleury Badunga are probably going to play sizable roles if they want to achieve that goal, right? They both have very obvious strengths in certain areas, right? I mean, I do want to say a big credit should go to Fleury because he really started off the game pretty rough with the chance and everything, but he ended up with some really nice blocks, made a couple great plays, and
game defensively really well.
Yeah, made some nice plays, and then like I said, KJ had a great first half. You did a great job highlighting it with talking about what he did on the offensive end. Obviously had that big dunk and made some couple nice plays as well. So yeah, I don't like where this has trended to. It feels like it needs to be an either or situation, when in reality you should want both guys to succeed, because if both guys are playing well and could play out for each other, it's going to help out Hunter Dickinson, first and foremost. Sure. And it gives you some extra depth down low, and both those guys can bring different strengths, which means you're more prepared to beat teams that use different lineups, right? Because that's another aspect of the NCAA tournament. You're going to face probably 2, 3, or 4 teams, however far run you go, that are going to have different strengths. And so you may have a game where KJ Adams is better suited to be out there and playing well. Then you're going to have a game where it could be Fleury. So you should want both guys to be successful. I don't like the either or side of it.
Yeah, and to your point, some games it's going to be both, right? Like against UCF, that wasn't that long ago. Fleury drops a double-double with 5 blocks, but at the end of the game, Keyshawn Hall is ridiculously hot, and Fleury can't stay with him. You have KJ come on at that point, and he plays the defensive cooler, and you get out with a win. There are going to be games where you need both guys to succeed at what they're good at, and I think having both of them is a benefit, not a weakness.
To wrap up this conversation, I'll just say this: I hope Fleury comes back. I hope Fleury comes back. There was some recent NBA mock drafts. One had him as high as 15. I hope he comes back, because Fleury with Darren Peterson could be absolutely insane to watch, potentially.
Yes, would be so fun.
Yeah. Let's keep this conversation going. We do have to get to a break real quick though, and that means we do have to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. You can shop Home Field Apparel at homefieldapparel.com using the promo code PAYHEAD24. It's right there on the screen, PAYHEAD24. Slap the 24 on the end of it, and you can get 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. They've got great Kansas gear, over 40 different Kansas items, over 140 other schools as well. So if you're an Iowa State fan, listen. I don't like Iowa State, obviously. I don't like TJ Otzelberger. If for whatever reason you're an Iowa State fan, Ames sucks. I'm sorry. But that being said, at homefieldapparel.com, they have a pretty cool hat that if I were an Iowa State fan, which I am not, but if I was, they've got a really cool hat that says Hilton Magic on it. It's actually really cool. Even though Hilton Magic doesn't exist, actually. But the hat is cool. So if you're an Iowa State fan, you can go get that. And we're hooking you up. You can use the promo, you took a loss tonight. You can take a win in your wallet with PAYHEAD24, that discount code, 15% off your first order. More KU basketball talk is coming up. We're back in just a moment.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
This is the Paid Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network, a live edition tonight on a Monday night after Big Monday. Kansas beats Iowa State 69-52. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank. Another fun stat out of this game, Kevin. Bill Self, 38-0 on Big Monday at Allen Fieldhouse. 38-0, which I just want to point something out here. How many other coaches do you think have even played 38 Big Monday games? like that should tell you how crazy the stat is. Not just that he's 38-0, but it's like there's no way. Like the list of coaches that have even coached in that many Big Monday games has got to be very slim. So incredibly impressive stuff from Bill Self and this Kansas squad as they take it to Iowa State. Iowa State's now lost 3 in a row. They look like they are dead in the water. I feel bad for Iowa State because this is objectively probably one of Iowa State's best teams they've had in history.
Sure.
And now they're sitting here at 7-4 in the conference, lost 3 in a row. Feels bad for them. Feels bad, but doesn't feel bad for Kansas. I can tell you that much. Kansas gets the win 69-52. Zeke Mayo, another fantastic game for him, Kevin, 17 points. He was great from 3 again. And this trend continues where at home, Zeke Mayo looks like a very different player than he does on the road. So it's nice to see him continue to have success at home. Would really love to see him translate a little bit of that to some road games because, man, he is so impressive. And Bill Self had a comment in post game, I think, after the Baylor game, basically saying, hey, it needs to be by committee a little bit with secondary scoring besides Hunter. And while I think that's true, like Zeke Mayo is right there. He's sitting right there, and he's so good at Allen Fieldhouse. It just needs to translate for him to road games.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the shots just need to fall for him on the road. And another thing that people don't talk about, I don't think enough, is the fact that people play with different basketballs at home and on the road. And so I'm not making an excuse for anybody. I'm telling you, there are teams that part of the reason that they don't shoot as well on the road is, hey, you go from using this basketball at home all the time, you go on the road and you're using a different kind of basketball. Maybe it's slicker, depending on which brand it is, whatever else. But Zeke needs to see some shots fall on the road to kind of get past that a little bit. I thought he and DeJuan played pretty well, generally speaking, particularly given that given the defensive responsibilities that those guys had, right? Because Iowa State's firepower comes from its guards. And going into the game that, hey, as much as you need us on offense to not turn the ball over against a team that turns you over a lot, you're also going to have to keep guys like Curtis Jones from, just absolutely lighting up the scoreboard. And so I thought when you look at what their responsibilities were, how much they had to carry, I thought they did pretty well, and they acquitted themselves well. How about Zeke's little kind of step back 3 that
the moonshot
that even had the guys on the broadcast going, ooh, ooh, ooh. I mean, it was that was pretty nice right there.
By the way, Fran Fraschilla, for whatever reason, was was mad all night. I don't know what was going on.
In fairness, it was a football game played on a basketball court, and Fran was not enjoying that. It went from him saying, "Well, it's really bad. It's not egregious and it's not favoring one team," to all these officials should be executed immediately in a hurry.
Yeah, it was an interesting night for him. Mr. Mikey says, thanks so much for joining us tonight and dropping a comment saying, hey, look, he's right.
Yeah.
If DeJuan Harris makes one free throw, Kansas could be right there. And if they hang on against Baylor, but they can't, those can't be dismissed, right? Games like that can't be dismissed. So, and I don't think this Iowa State game totally erases that, but certainly it puts you back on track a little bit. And I've kind of alluded to it on the show a little bit, but look, after this K-State game on Saturday, Kansas has a stretch of 5 games that are very, very winnable, and they should win. They have a stretch. They play Colorado twice, who, by the way, is 0-10 in conference. They play Arizona State, and
do not become the one. Do not become the one.
That's true. Don't become the one. They play. So it's Colorado twice, Arizona State, at Arizona State, I'm pretty sure. And then at BYU, which that's the one where it's like, okay, that could be tough. And
yeah, for sure.
I think Oklahoma State's the other one. So those 5 games, you'd think you should be able to go 5-0 in, or maybe 4-1 at the least. I mean, Provo will be tough, like Nick Harris says. Provo will be tough, but you get through this K-State game unscathed, which is certainly going to be a challenge considering how K-State's playing right now. Then you maybe set yourself up for, I don't want to say a sigh of relief or like some reprieve, but you set yourself up for what you hope should be a stretch where you can really start to stack up some wins and build a little bit more momentum as well. So also, one other thing I wanted to touch on, I had a comment about this actually on our Twitter page before the game at PaidKCSN. You can follow over there. Somebody basically mentioned, hey, does this game tonight really matter that much? Because considering like win or loss, considering like you're just trying to get whatever you can for March. And there's really two parts of that I wanted to kind of highlight here. Number one, you're playing at Allen Fieldhouse. Every game at Allen Fieldhouse matters, right? You want to win at Allen Fieldhouse. But number two, yes, I think over the past couple of years, especially with the transfer portal and so on and so forth, we've kind of gotten into this track of conversation where it's, hey, who cares how KU looks in November and December and January? Like, just start to build up by the time you get to February and whatnot, right? And I'll just say this: it is a luxury to think that way if from the KU perspective, because for a lot of teams, you're just trying to win games so you could make the NCAA tournament. But from Kansas' perspective, they haven't been lower than a 4 seed in 22 years, and so it's just assumed that you're going to be that, and then it's just like, okay, well, let's just see how things go. And this is a game that, depending on how things play out, that you could look back at this game and say, this is the reason why KU was a 2 seed versus a 4 seed, or this could be the reason why KU was a 3 seed versus a 5 seed. So games like this absolutely do matter 100% in terms of the wins and loss beyond everything else that goes on with that conversation. But yeah, you want KU to be a high seed. You get a high seed by winning big games like this.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that. I think too, KU's not a finished product. And so every game right now is important for them to continue to build that out. I mean, Brad had a message earlier about having as much confidence in Flory as we did in KJ. Flory's got a chance to do a lot this month. And not that he hasn't already done some great things. He's had double-doubles. He's had great blocks and everything else. Flory's got a chance to take that step and really establish himself, not as a guy that, the last couple games I think have been outliers for him, right? Like, I would expect him to bounce back really quickly. I think that's the type of player he is. I think that's the type of kid he is. And when I say bounce back, today he was great defensively, but I think you'll see him bounce back more on the glass. I think you'll see him score more. But these games are important for him in building that confidence, right? That he's going to be there in March the way that you want him. Rylan Griffin tonight had some great looks. And I don't worry about Rylan Griffin shooting. He's a good shooter. You get him enough good looks, he's going to start making them. This month is important for that. And so on one hand, people may say, even a game like, okay, at Colorado, how much is this really proving, well, it could be big. It could be a game that establishes somebody in a role. How about we haven't mentioned it, Nick? How about the positive minutes from AJ Storr?
I was going to get into AJ Storr. Yeah.
A guy that, we've been harsh on this show, and I think rightly so, because there are times when AJ Storr looks really, really good, and there's other times when he seems disinterested. This was good AJ Storr, and he gave them some good minutes and helped them build that first half lead that they were able to protect the rest of it. I think to Mr. Monkey Says' point that he just posted there in terms of buying back, a lot of people say I'm over patient. My wife, who adores me, I think would call me measured, which is maybe a little bit more kind way of putting it. Yeah, I enjoyed this win just as I'm sure all of you guys did, but the issue hasn't been that KU doesn't have a strong A game. We've seen that Kansas's A game can play with anybody, whether that's Duke, whether that's Houston, whether that was what they did in the first half against Baylor, whether that was what they did against Iowa State. The issue's been the consistency. And so to his point, that's what I want to see. I'm not saying I'm not coming out of this with optimism, because I am. But at the same time, we knew, I feel like, that Kansas was capable of something like this. What Kansas hasn't shown just yet is the ability to stack up several games like this in a row. And not all of them have to be A games in terms of how you play, but A games in terms of effort, in terms of focus. Maybe you miss shots, but you defend still really well. That's what I'm waiting to see in terms of like full buyback. And actually, I thought it was a telling statement from Bill Self when he was talking to Scott Van Pelt in the immediate aftermath of the game. Self said, man, there are a lot of terrific teams in college basketball this year. He goes, I wouldn't put us in that group yet, but I think we can get there. And I think that's a good way to look at it. And it's also, kind of funny, Nick, we have all of this angst, right, about this KU team. And with tonight's win, they're up to number 7 on KenPom. I can't think of a top 10 team on KenPom that has gotten so murdered by different people, the fans, us, everybody, in terms of, oh my gosh, I don't even know if they're any good. They're number 7 on KenPom. That's not really a horrible indicator. It does show, I think, that they can be really, really good. But again, to Mr. Monkey Says his point, like, I'll believe it when I see the games stacked, when I see a strong performance in Manhattan, when I see them follow that up with another strong showing. And when you start to see, okay, they're performing like this on a regular basis, this is who this team is now.
Bill Self also told Scott Van Pelt post game that he thinks they can go on a run. Right?
He did.
So he still is absolutely bought in. Self is still absolutely bought in on what he thinks this team can do and how far he thinks they can go, which is great to hear. And to circle back to AJ Storr a little bit, yeah, man, just when I want to write him off. I mean, if you happen to listen to the show on Saturday night, I was, see ya, AJ Storr. I was signing his death warrant. You're done. You're gone. Goodbye. Thanks for nothing. Have a nice life. Whatever. And just when I'm ready to sign on the dotted line, he just pulls me back in. He just pulls me back in with what he did tonight. And it wasn't even like he did anything crazy tonight, but he played well. And so now I'm suckered back in on him. He hustled, made some nice plays defensively, ends up with 8 points, hit a couple 3-point shots. Like, yes, really good showing from AJ Storr in a smaller sample size. He ends up only playing 17 minutes, but that's fine, right? I mean, he was effective for those minutes. Yeah, and he was effective for those minutes. So, yeah, just when I want to fully write off AJ Storr, he just pulls me back in a little bit. So, and I still almost get this weird sixth sense that there will be a game where he's just going to go off for like 25 points, and that's going to be the reason KU wins. Like, I still think that's going to happen at some point, even though I still want to write him off at the same time because of some of the struggles he's had this season. But he won't quit on me, and I'm happy about that. I'm happy that he won't quit because I want him to be successful, and I want him to have an impact for KU down the stretch.
Is he this year's Nick Timberlake? And what I mean by that is, But for those of you who don't know, Nick was on Rock Chalk Sports Talk. I was a recurring guest on that show. And one of the things that we talked about a year ago with Nick Timberlake was, yeah, he's struggling. Yeah, things aren't going well. The ball's not dropping. But Nick Timberlake is going to be a reason why KU wins or loses a game in March. It was something we brought up over and over again. Nick, KU won one game in March in the NCAA tournament, I should say. And Nick Timberlake was a big part of the reason that they won that game. He actually shot the ball well, etc. Is AJ Storr the guy that you're kind of looking at and saying, for all these other pieces and guys that we know, like Fleury's spot in the rotation is cemented / will go up. With all of these different guys, is AJ Storr the guy that we aren't talking about that KU will either win or lose a game in March because of what he does?
Shout out to Jared Lentz here asking about what Nicky teased up. By the way, Nick Timberlake, I don't know what league he's in, but he just had a great game. I think like over the weekend or something. I don't know what league it is in. I'd have to do some quick fact checking. He had a great game somewhere just recently in a game. I'm trying to quickly look it up here on the fly. I don't remember where it was at, but he actually had a great game. I'm telling you, somewhere in I don't know, maybe Greece or something. I'm not really sure, to be honest. But yes, I understand your point here, Kevin, about AJ Storr and maybe some comparison to Nick Timberlake in that regard, because I think it could be true. I mean, I think AJ Storr could still have that type of impact in a game where he just goes off and is the reason KU wins. And I want him to be successful. It kind of goes back to, the conversation with Flory and KJ is I want them to be successful. I want AJ Storr to play up to what we know he's capable of potentially being, especially on the offensive end. It's just a matter of, can he do that with the time allocated that he has left? Basically we're talking about a month. We're talking about basically 11, 12 games at this point that he has left to try to figure that out and step into a bigger role. So yeah, I would love to see that because it would really help out. I mean, look, the reason even why he was able to get into the game tonight was because of foul trouble. I mean, Rylan Griffin picked up his second foul, and that's why AJ Storr got in the game in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. I think both of us, people need to understand, if KU goes to the Final Four and AJ Storr is dropping 20 points, I really hope he locates Nick and I in the stands and gives us the double birds. And it's just this is for you guys who never believed in me. In all seriousness, we do want all of these guys to succeed and all of these guys to reach their potential. AJ's had some good moments. And so I do think that he's a guy that hopefully is starting to find his comfort level a little bit. He's played a fairly major role in two of KU's biggest wins this year, Nick. When you look at the game today, and then the game against Duke was one of his best games of the year. And so I do think that he's potentially a major key. To Brad's point there, I would tend to agree with that in terms of, hey, if Rylan Griffin is defending, if he's the 3-and-D guy that KU kind of picked him up to be, and he's making shots and he's defending, he was a big part of the reason Alabama made it to the Final Four last year, because he defended really, really well. And that was a big key. Flory, I think, is a guy that comes in and can be a buzzsaw and can change a game really quickly, both with his defense around the rim and his ability to stack up points just really quickly on effort and athleticism plays. And I think, too, whatever we think Flory is right now, Nick, we've seen Flory improve so much over the last month to get to this point that I'm not even sure what Flory's going to look like in March, because there's still another level or several levels that he's capable of taking his game, where we head into March thinking, oh my gosh, Flory's a guy you cannot take off the court at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, think about the jump that he made from January 1st to February 1st.
Yeah.
Now imagine if he makes a similar jump from February 1st to March 1st. We could be talking about, a guy that is an elite, playing at an elite level at the right time for Kansas. And he's still just a freshman. He's still a guy that you can clearly tell sometimes. Like I said, I think we saw tonight a little bit early on where he just maybe tries a little bit too hard, right? But puts too much pressure on himself and presses a little bit. So I think if he just gets into the flow of a game, though, I mean, it's obvious we've seen what his athleticism is, what his skill set is, and what his ceiling could be, in March, right? So that is something certainly that I would look forward to, because you would drawn the dotted line, I guess, so to speak, to Joel Embiid with his development, and Fleury, I think, is on that track a little bit, and who knows what he could do in the next month or so to set himself up for March.
Yeah, for sure. Joel Embiid was a guy that was getting benched, and then all of a sudden became sort of an indispensable part of what they were doing. They played San Diego State, and he couldn't pass out of double teams. And like a week or two later, he was maybe the best passing big man in the Big 12. I mean, the growth curve was so accelerated with him, and you're seeing a lot of that with Fleury. And you see, the shot blocking. One of the things that's been nice about it, Nick, is generally speaking, Fleury hasn't been leaving his feet as early as he was earlier this year, and so he's continued to block shots. But he's also found a way to not commit as many fouls as he was earlier. He's found a way to play a little bit more under control. And so you can see the cog turning, if you will. And if Fleury is that kind of guy where you're looking at him and you're saying, my gosh, like this guy isn't a first-round pick 2 years from now. He's a first-round pick if he goes right now. And it's not just because somebody sees upside in him. It's because he's really good. Then obviously Kansas takes another step forward as well.
Kansas wins 69-52 tonight against Iowa State. Some of the stats, Kevin, we touched on it earlier in the show that were kind of just bizarre to think about. Iowa State finishes the game with 7 more offensive rebounds than Kansas, and yet Kansas had more second chance points than Iowa State. Iowa State really struggled. They were 3 of 21 from 3. They just were totally out of it basically from the start. Didn't really have much fight in them, and Kansas took advantage of that, and then were able to keep them at arm's length for the rest of the second half and get the win 69-52 on Big Monday. Bill Self, an absurd 38-0 now at Allen Fieldhouse on Big Monday. I think he's 48-1.
Shame on us, by the way.
What's up?
Because when we picked after the Baylor game, both of us picked Iowa State to win. And granted, we did say. Wait a minute.
Did you? I'm not gonna. Hang on. I'm not going to let you throw me under the bus here. I'm pretty sure I picked Kansas because I told you I would. I told you I couldn't.
We're going to need to go back in some research here. We did both say.
We need a review.
We did say it feels like Kansas gets you absolutely have to have this game at Allen Fieldhouse. And I picked Iowa State to win. So at least shame on me. Well, we'll say half shame on Nick until the replay.
Because I'm pretty sure I told you that I can't bring myself to pick TJ Otzelberger, is what I told you.
Yeah, you might be right.
Which would mean that I think I picked Kansas.
All right. Well, shame on me then for picking that, and I should have known better. But Nick did pick KU football to go 11-1.
I did. Yeah, that was a tough one. Yeah, but yeah, it's a real shame.
I picked 10-2. Like let's put all the cards on the table.
But it's a real shame that Iowa State lost. They have to go back to Ames where they can go eat their Panera bread and cross their stupid little bridge.
Are you not a Hickory House fan?
No. I don't even know what that is. Is that a place in Ames?
Isn't that the name of the maybe not Hickory House, the Hickory barbecue place in Ames?
Oh.
Hickory Park, excuse me.
Hickory Park?
Hickory Park. I've eaten there. It's not bad.
Okay. You can go to Hickory Park and eat some barbecue to make yourselves feel better about this run for Iowa State. But, not tonight. Not tonight. Kansas gets the win. 69-52. We'll talk more probably later this week about that game coming up on Saturday against K-State. We'll have a little more time to break that down later in the week. Also, we'll probably be talking about this later in the week as well. The Big 12 football schedule, by the way, is expected to be released coming up on Tuesday. So we may need to touch on that as well coming up later on this week.
We'll hit on that request, Nick. I did get a request in the DMs for us to talk about KU football players preparing for the NFL draft and kind of where their stock is at. So,
okay, yeah, we could talk about that.
Might do a little bit of that coming off the Senior Bowl where KU had some guys at. So yeah, that
absolutely
could be another one.
So we'll probably be hitting on all of that then later this week because Kansas now has some time to sort of get ready for that K-State game. Yep. K-State, by the way, is at Arizona State tomorrow night. So if you're in the mood to get a little bit of pre-scouting in, if you haven't watched much of K-State this year, you can check out that game tomorrow night. We'll probably watch it a little bit and talk about that a little bit as well later on in the week as KU prepares for K-State on Saturday in Manhattan, and I expect we'll probably be going live after the game on Saturday as well. So if you're not subscribed already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Kansas Jocks KCSN on YouTube. You can turn on that little alarm bell so you know or you're notified when we go live after the K-State game, like we will on Saturday more than likely, and after any other games as well. So, and if you're on the audio side, be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review. Also, Kevin, you got any more thoughts tonight for our good listeners?
No, great performance. I mean, that's what you want, right? Is to build a big lead and then not just hold on to it, but never give the other team the thought that they have a chance. And so immediately following that Baylor game, that was needed for them to shut the faucet off like that and not give Iowa State any chance of coming back or any real belief. And so it was kind of just what the doctor ordered. Now let's see if they can continue with some consistency and go put in a strong performance in a place that's been kind of a bugaboo for Kansas in Manhattan.
For sure. Like I said, be sure to stay tuned and stay subscribed to our YouTube channel. Stay subscribed to there you go. Blind Justice has, look at this. He's got great memory. Remember Nick picking KU, but it was a really weak, I guess KU. Look, a pick is a pick, okay? It counts. Count it, right? Count that.
Nick was definitely not out here saying KU by 17.
Thank you, Mr. Mikey Says, for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you to everybody that's hanging out with us tonight, or if you're listening after the fact or watching after the fact, just thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for joining us and just giving us some love and supporting our content. Once again, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to our YouTube channel at Kansas Jocks KCSN. You can also subscribe on the KC Sports Network to our audio platform on Spotify, Apple. If you ever miss any of the shows and you want to listen back afterwards, or if you're going for a drive, right, driving into work, there you go. You got the audio side as well to help you out also. One final note here before we do leave. It is Super Bowl week, obviously. And so if you are not aware, which I would be hard pressed to believe that you aren't aware, but if for whatever reason you're not aware, be sure to check out KCSN's coverage of the Chiefs at the Super Bowl as well. Tucker Franklin, BJ Kissel, Haley Lewis are all down in New Orleans. We got boots on the ground in New Orleans with great Super Bowl coverage here on KCSN. So
Bourbon Street is not prepared for Tucker D. Franklin.
No, I don't think it is. I don't know if he's prepared for it either, though. So that could be a battle of two Goliaths, I think, between those two, Tucker and Bourbon Street. So, yeah, check that out as well. Check out the other great coverage on KCSN as well, beyond us here on KU as well, and support the channel also. So, but until then, I guess if you don't have anything else, Kevin, we'll talk to you guys again soon. See ya.